Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to our live. Remember, I'm Brian. This is Matthew Creedican, former Navy SEAL. And today we're here to take questions about Ukraine. Matthew's been on the front lines for a number of years and also was in many combat zones for the U.S. military. And remember, we're Technology United for Ukraine. And if you'd like to join us, the link will be in the description. And if you're an engineer, scientist, or just want to help out, technician, whatever, we'll go over to our side and sign up. All right, so let's get started. It looks like we have 3 people, but Terry Knight wants to know. He says, I'd like to know what we can do to enhance Ukrainian combat troops' effectiveness in the coming winter months when movement by both sides is hampered by weather. Go right ahead. That's up your alley, not mine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to answer this in the context of kind of technology side of things. We can kind of touch on, obviously training would be a big part of it. But as far as technology goes, I think being able to set up and continue. There's an effort by a group called Aerorozvitka, which was started in 2014, and they started wiring cameras up on the front and other sensor systems. They were actually some of the guys that made the Delta system. Just for the audience, the Delta system is kind of like a common operating picture for Ukraine, where they basically pull all the different signals and sensor system, and it's even sightings are just hand jammed in. So basically, think of it, it's a big map in one sense, and then you can kind of see where different enemy sightings have been and different SIGINT, and there's different layers to that system. So one of the things I would say is, besides digging more trenches and putting in more just defensive works and fallback positions for that, it'd be installing additional camera systems, laying the wire for that, and laying the communications network so you can easily communicate in a non-wireless fashion or a very directed wireless fashion. Like if you went with 10 gigahertz or higher, you can make those beams so tight that it's very hard to direction find or find with like signal analysis type tools. So, whether you're laying fiber or cable, as it comes into those winter months, just basically getting better communications and laying that out. And then, ever present always into the drone space, where you're just providing more and more ground drones and coupling them with flying drones. So the ground drones, they have a lot more sustainability behind them, where you can park them, put them in a position, and have an overwatch, sit and wait. Or like your flying drones, they have some perching capabilities, but maybe not as long term, just because you can't stick a giant battery on it. Like if you have a wheeled drone, you can put quite a big sustainable battery in that thing and let it sit there for days on end. And it could even have a wireless or a wired system going back to an operator. And you can kind of reposition it. It could be camouflaged. And if it gets taken out, which it might, you can just replace it. So you're kind of looking at that cost-effective sensor array. And then so when you do detect something moving, you can easily send something out to go counter it. And, we're going to see, a whole lot more. I think a lot of, I'm trying to answer this in just a general context to the immobility aspect. I think that's what you'd be looking at. Just overall, you have to go to the counter UAS side as well. Not necessarily countering enemy attack drones directly, but at countering the observation platforms first, because they're big, they're slow, and they're generally expensive. A little bit harder to stop an FPV, quite a bit easier to take down. You've probably seen a lot of the videos are starting to come out of FPVs ramming or otherwise kind of hitting the Orlons and other observation type drones. So more of that, basically remove the enemy's eyes and ears and increase yours.
So you see a lot of counter drone operations, a lot more utilization of different fiber communications on the front lines with cameras and communication. So you'd see that as a direction they would be that.
Yeah, and it wouldn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be like radio system. Like you have acoustic sensors for tracking drones, also for tracking ground forces, camera systems, radar systems, passive receivers like signal analyzers, and trying to find the right cost-effective sensor, because you can get the really expensive ones, but if you lose those, it's a lot of money. Or you can get if they're really cheap, then you might not be getting the fidelity you need. If it's just that right, $100 sensor, $200 sensor that can pull some good data, and you have these strung out across the front, then you get that spatial difference, and you can get your time difference of arrivals. You can do a lot of other calculations, because it's all about finding and knowing where the enemy is, as well as knowing where your own forces are. So
and I think we've talked about that a lot, you and I, is just cost effectiveness. This is a war that is about kind of low cost technologies, and there's no exception. There's just, the money's not there. You can blow through, as we've seen, $60 billion is nothing in an ongoing war. It just gets gobbled right up. So they have to have more cost effective technologies.
Yeah, and there needs to be some definitely prioritization of funds. Like, I mean, it's nice to fund the medical side, or it's nice to fund the pension of Ukrainians or civil servants. Those are nice to haves, but we have to kind of really look at what wins a war and what keeps you from catastrophically losing. And I would say that's those cost-effective solutions, and that's the components that go into drones, because we see the effectiveness of drones just ever growing, and the cost effectiveness of drones just far outstripping anything else on the battlefield. So how do you get those components in large quantities and at good price points? And a lot of that is coming up with a generally decent design, and then having an agreement that you're going to build those. So you can find the right contract manufacturers and the right design, then you can put in orders of 50,000 a month or even greater. You really need to get it to even higher numbers than that. We know the Chinese are, they're the suppliers of all these components right now, 85% probably. So it looks like we have another question here.
Michael Richards. It is no secret that Russia has considerable capabilities in cyber warfare arena. Do you think the protection of data is an immediate risk? Does this really impact daily operations on the front lines? Excellent question.
Yeah, it's a significant effect. I'd say probably breaking into the Motorola systems quite often, if not continuously. It's hard to say for sure, but we just kind of basically consider them compromised all the time, whether it's they've broken some weakness in the Motorola's, which, just by the way, Motorola's are the primary wireless radio that the Ukrainians use, and they have the repeater networks, all that stuff set up for them. So that's the way they're primarily communicating. And I would say those are quite broken, and you can't rely on even if you change your encryption codes, which don't always get changed, but even if you had, you're likely going to get those broken. You should basically, if you run an operation, you expect those to be just broken straight out of the gate, especially if you start speaking non-Ukrainian. So definitely an issue.
What are the risks cyber warfare too? What do you see them hacking into soldiers' emails, stuff like this? I mean, sometimes we talk about never OPSECing, and parts of OPSECing is being careful what, as a regular soldier, you're emailing pictures to somebody or texting pictures to somebody. And have the Russians really
oh yeah, no, they've definitely gotten better at that, and their ability to strike at targets has definitely increased in speed. So it's definitely a major concern from somebody inadvertently posting a picture with geotags in it, or even just your background being
geotags. It's true.
Just the background itself. Like if you have a general idea where they're at, you see some of these geotagger guys. I forget exactly what they call themselves, but they can look at a background and be like, "Oh, that's a maple tree, and the angle of the sun's at this," and you can see the ground. And, they'll pick that stuff out pretty quick. Yeah. So, yeah.
There you go. This goes back to something you talked about in one of our videos, the cover matrix. Basically, what target should we be hitting in Russia? What would you think?
Oh, on the Carver matrix. Yeah, I mean, in general, that one, I think there's the basic ones, and if there's like exquisitely cool ones, I'm not going to say here, but I think the obvious ones are your power and your oil. Um, Depending on when you do an operation, like communications infrastructure, like some things you don't want to hit unless you can follow up with a secondary attack to exploit the weakness that you open in that because you might be able to hit it. Say you hit some train stations and you shut that down. Well, they're going to go if you can't follow that up with a larger attack, it's just going to force them to upgrade their systems, and then they're going to have a new system. And ultimately you didn't achieve like a deeper, longer, bigger victory.
Well, question too I have for you is we see where they are manufacturing tanks and then what do you call it, refurbishing them. How come they
Right.
haven't hit those? What do you think do you think they're just hidden, or they're just not be able to reach wherever they are?
I think it's well, I mean, okay, so partially it's a matter of reach, partially it's a matter of prioritizing. And how much damage can you do with X amount of explosives? Like if you can get 2,000-pound bombs into places, then you're going to do a lot of damage. If you're only able to like do 10 kg, you need to find those more sensitive things. Because some factories, you just think of how the thing's laid out. The factory itself is like you do one bomb in a big open area, like it just doesn't do a lot. And you stick that same bomb into a oil refinery, you hit the right spot under their methane reactor, then you cause big secondaries. So I think a lot of it's like getting the right weight of explosive to the right area, and some of these targets, like those systems, would probably require a large amount of explosive to do significant damage, or just exquisitely targeting a thing, which it's just hard to do at those ranges. And I think there's some ways to do it, but maybe not discussed here.
You need a lot bigger delivery platform to take out.
You got to go after stuff like that. I think that's
you see these guys in Kharkiv here. They're held up in that they call a cathedral thing, but I think it's a manufacturing area or something. And I mean, they're having a hard time. Look at Mariupol and the manufacturers. It took a lot of bombing just to, take out some of the positions that the Ukrainians were in at Mariupol. So maybe it's the same thing. It's just so durable. All right. So Terry Knight, if Motorola Tactical Radio Network is compromised, then why are we proving Russian forces with deceptive information here prior to operations there? So why aren't we?
I get it. Yeah. If you know that they're listening, can you feed them the right stuff? I mean, I think it's a good idea. I mean, these things need to be developed. And if somebody wants to work on that side, you get them in touch with the right people. It's a matter of coordination. I think you need as much deception and warfare as possible. So if the right people showed up, or could create these kind of like automated feeds, either need the people that can develop. I imagine there's some ways you could just record some of your own traffic and then get an AI to duplicate that, and then duplicate it with some variation. I don't know. I think it's a decent idea, Terry. It's a decent idea. It may be a thing to look at. I wish I had the bandwidth to do all of them, but if someone's interested in that, we'd definitely be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, very, very. It's all about deception and misinformation. And now with AI can, do a lot of things real fast. We've seen that with it make shorts for us. I was kind of shocked how it pulled, the best like stuff we were talking about, just extracted it out of a video, and it understood what we were saying in context. Like, right. I mean, which is pretty shocking that it was that abstract.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty incredible. So What else do you think, Matthew, with do you see the Russians now having a hard time being able to advance? We're seeing that as we looked at, the losses are getting greater and greater. And now with, the introduction of S-16s, they won't be a game changer. But again, it's another technology that they're not used to fighting. And now they got to figure that one out. So do you see them in the next coming months slowing down more with everything, with, their artillery getting hit at 50 pieces a day? And
yeah, I don't know if they're going to slow down that much. I mean, I think they're throwing everything they can. It's like a Ted offensive in a sense, because they're probably looking at this next election coming up as a kind of a solidifier of gains, or see if they can break the Ukrainians. Which, I mean, they're pushing through some parts now, so like there's definitely putting pressure on the Ukrainians. They'll probably we'll see how much they outrun their own supply lines. I don't think the Russians really set up for like super deep breakthroughs, but I think their idea is to just pressure all the time, and see if they can, and just go after those units that are poorly led or poorly under equipped, and just try to keep hitting those weak points. So the Ukrainians, they've been getting their recruiting has been increased, so we'll see if they can get those guys and solidify the front. But I don't know. I don't see it slowing down. I think they're going to keep trying to or push as much as they can. It's hard to say. I don't have enough information to be great at predicting.
I mean, I don't think anybody, it's a prediction. We don't know everything the Russians have. I think everything's a little bit of an extrapolation. And so, anybody's guess is as good as anybody else's. And interesting, and Ivan says with the refurbished, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, no, go ahead and read it, because I was going to address that.
All right. So with the refurbished Armour, there's a channel on YouTube called Covert Cobol, and the guy that runs that channel pays for his own up-to-date satellite images and reveals Soviet stocks are dwindling. Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff too on Reddit where people will be showing like before, like 3 months ago. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously with the amount of destruction, we're in over 10,000, I think, tanks have been destroyed. And with the T-90s, as Ivan's saying, keeping in mind they can't build a ton of T-90s every year. I think they can make, if I'm not incorrect, something like 60 a month, something like that. I remember seeing some numbers, and that's just not enough to feed the front lines.
Yeah, I think they're going to be hard pressed to make significant amounts of armor once they get through all their refurbishment stocks. But they have been getting better at those refurbishments. It's by no means means that they're significantly out of the fight as they start to run low on those, because who knows what deals they're making with North Korea, and a lot of this is going to come in. Like China can't really overtly sell them military stuff without getting in more trouble with the West. But who knows if and when China will make a bigger play one direction or the other. I would say the Chinese have been playing around with, the types of components and stuff they've been selling to the Russians. Last year they were selling them whole factories for drone components, drone FPVs. So as they run out of those, it's not necessarily a good thing, because they'll just have the Russians concentrate even more on drone systems. So as that option runs dry, even the old guard, if they can't get to the tanks, then they'll be forced into the new age of drones. And I think we're really waiting on another shoe to drop in the, when it comes to AI targeted systems, or even just pixel lock. And, the Russians have some systems that are, their Orlan complex and the way it can relay radio system information. They've already running kind of these smaller drone systems. There's, reports of, motherships and swarms going deep into Ukraine already. So, yeah, I mean, good to track, but I don't think it's It's going to significantly change the outcome. I think what will significantly change the outcome of this war is who comes up with drone swarms or drone-like swarms. Like even if it's not a swarm, it's just wave after wave after wave of individually piloted systems with a little bit of pixel lock to reduce EW. Whoever gets that rolling, then you'll see a sea change. You'll see a strategic victory. So that's mainly what I'm kind of looking at.
Yeah,
systems faster.
Yeah, yep, nope, absolutely. And and one has to ask too whether China really wants to supply them with more weapons. They may,
yeah.
they may
So
have no interest in helping Russia in the long term. It benefits them.
yeah. So there's been some like I don't know. It's hard to say, but I've heard some reports about the Chinese messing even with the Russian supply chains and not taking payments and not providing what they were even a year ago. So hard to read the Chinese. Obviously, China's out for China, no doubt about it.
There's a lot of land they want in Russia, and we know that. They're out in Siberia cutting the wood and the other resources they're interested in. And as Russian military depletes, we know that they already negotiated taking some territory back that the Russians had taken. I mean, way back, probably in the turn of the century, there was some areas that they considered theirs, and the Russians have recently had to concede them back to China. So you better be careful. China's nobody's friend, I always say.
Well, and you also have a bunch of Chinese going into Russia to basically work the fields and like sharecropper, basically. So you have a lot of Chinese already moving people in, which is always the best way to assimilate a place is just push people in, better than even armies.
Well, and it gives them an excuse to have their own special operation, because as Russia becomes weaker and weaker, and you're going to have revolts. I mean, Prigozhin was just a messenger of bad tidings. That's all that was. So when we look at what could happen out, if we have, I think they're called the Yuki, the people out in Siberia, who've been, a lot of them, they've just been a massive amount of them sent to the front lines. They're getting more and more angry. And if something happens, you have a revolt, the Russians have no troops to really handle it, like we've seen with Prigozhin. The Chinese may say, well, we got to do a special operation. We have Chinese speakers there. As the Russians said, they were trying to help out the Russian speakers, and they're just going to walk in and say, we're just going to make sure things are okay for the Chinese speakers, and then we're going to leave or whatever. And they never leave.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be some kind of salami slicing game. That's for sure. Like they'll grab something somehow.
Exactly. Is there any other questions out there? Anybody else? Oh, here we go. We got one. Let's see. This might be a statement. Yeah, the partnership without limits has limits. I'm sure that Zai has his eye on the Armour, if I said it right, Armour River Valley, what used to be called Northern Manchuria. I agree. China only cares for China. Yeah, absolutely. They've wanted to expand their own territories like Russia has. And I think, with Taiwan being in their crosshairs, and maybe there's some other places that they haven't revealed yet that they want back. And so, I mean, there's a lot to be seen that happens now that Russia is becoming less of a player in that area. Because I think it was Russia that helped to keep peace between India and China. It was Russia always kind of intervening in their disputes. But soon, what will happen there? I mean, there's an interesting, that's going to be an interesting scenario.
Yeah. Well, and then we have the Middle East and everything that's going on there. And we're quite close to Lebanon kicking off. And if that kicks off, we get probably a lot of other players pulled into that. And then even more attention potentially pulled from Ukraine. So, that might be, that just becomes quite chaotic at that point. It's very hard to predict.
There's a lot of stuff a lot of interesting history is going to be made soon. Okay, says, look, okay, one last question. Does Mr. Kritikin think the breakup of Russia is something that needs to happen, even if it's an impossible hypothetical? Does he agree, or too risky due to the nukes? Oh, yeah, it's a very...
Yeah, look, I think it's, what's it mean to break up Russia? at the end of the day. Like what you want is to promote, like my philosophy is you reward what you want. So there are people in Russia. Yes, they have this this history of being imperialistic and taking over their neighbors. That's a big part of Russian history. At the same time, I'd say there's a fair amount of people in that country that given the correct kind of leadership, and actually rewarding people who seek kind of a liberalized freedom for themselves. If you reward that and you help those people out, then if and when Russia comes to start to destabilize, I wouldn't necessarily seek its breakup just because of the chaos you'd cause. Then that you would just seek to reward those people who are interested in. I don't even like saying democracy anymore because it's been so overused. But those people that kind of seek and desire liberty, justice, and kind of focus on truth. Like you want to reward all those people in every society that are in that mindset. And how the government turns out after that, I think it's something you play. It's kind of you play as it comes.
So, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Obviously, I have tons. We often have a lot of off-air conversations. It's funny, like you said, usually it's our off-air conversations are probably the most interesting. And we will be having a former F-15, F-16 pilot, also was pretty high ranking in the Air Force. He'll be coming on with Matthew in the future, and they will be talking about what the impact will have. You got a Navy SEAL, you have somebody who has extensive experience with F-16s, and it'd be an interesting conversation on what your perspective is of how that's going to actually impact the battlefield. But what would you say the one big thing the F-16 is going to bring to Ukraine? What platform? What do you think it's going to be? The weapons platforms that they're going to have. What do you think is going to be the major contributor?
Right. Like they made for which weapon, for what weapons platform are you talking about? Like, can you kind of explain
Like anything like harms, whatever they, you'd be more of
as far as like what weapons are coming on the F-16?
Yeah. How's it going to most impact? What weapon system?
Well, I mean, like, look, that those glide bombs have been extremely effective. A lot of those positions would have normally held. There just naturally becomes these defensive points, whether it's the terrain or how the guys have entrenched themselves, and when you drop a 2,000-pound or 1,000-pound bomb on that position, it reduces, even if you didn't kill a lot of people, it reduces its fighting capability, and then you can basically open up holes in the defensive line and get your breakthroughs. And I would say
they're going to carry a 2,000-pound bomb on F-16.
No, you're missing. Maybe I wasn't clear. It's stopping those. So like when the Russians are dropping those stabs and the glide bombs, they're really breaking holes in the line. Like that's making a big difference. So the F-16 being able to push those back and threaten them to keep them out of that zone, to keep them from dropping those bombs in the critical areas and times, well, that'll make a difference. Like,
what weapon does the F-16 have? What would be the thing that would push them back?
Oh, it's got the aim, whatever. I forget. I don't. This is like this is where we need our buddy.
Yeah, he'll tell you.
But it's got. I think there's a lot of speculation. I forget the types, but there's a new AIM missile that has like a few 100-mile range or something. That one of the latest ones. Like I doubt they're going to give that to him, but with the new administration, who knows what they'll give him or not give him. It's kind of up. And maybe they would give him the more advanced stuff to push the Russians back, because it would be like more of a purely defensive type of system at that point. Like it would be kind of creating a no-fly zone with those type of weapons, or at least significantly threatening their capability. So I would say it's just the longer range anti-air systems, which would be probably the most significant impact. Now, yes, you have the harms in order to take down enemy. Either enemy jammers or they're more traditionally used to take down the anti-air systems. But they've had some of the harms, and the Ukraine, I think they didn't have enough, and the Ukrainians were using them, this is a while ago, as sensor packages. They just turn the sensor on, fly around with it, pull sensor data back and then just locate, and then trying to use other assets to destroy the Russian systems. If it's the older harm systems, I'd be kind of, if they're firing into a very active zone, I'd be interested to see how they perform with all the jamming around, because they're going to be flipping their radars. I don't think the Russians are too unfamiliar with turning the radars on and off quite quickly to try to confuse the systems. Like the more advanced ones should have kind of a locality permanence built in. Like once it detects a location, it will just continue on to that location. So you can turn your radar on, turn it off. If you don't move, then you're in trouble. The new sensor to shooter, whether those new harms you can push additional data to them, probably not. I mean, we've been restricting the cooler weapons for the most part to the Ukrainians, but I'd say hard to say.
I know there were 3 of those bombers that were destroyed a couple days ago. I don't know. I forget the number, TUs, or I don't know. I don't remember. I know there were the big ones, and I think they're the ones that dropped those bombs, those glide bombs, and they took out 3. So maybe the F-16, F-15s are already doing their work. I don't know if they were on the ground when they got blown up or if they were in the air. It wasn't really specified. They just said 3 of them were taken out.
Right. So in the comments there, he talked about the SLAM. I think that has a 170 mile range to it, something like that. Looks like 170 miles. So, that would be that would be. I mean, obviously, there's definitely a fair amount of targets you could hit with that thing, probably quite effectively if they let them use it.
This is our favorite guy. Ivan's our information expert, man, the fact checker for me. Yes, that's right. It was the TU-22M. I remembered there was a TU and the rest I couldn't remember. But 3 of them were taken out in a day. Now, I don't know if they were on the ground. They didn't say. And I'm wondering if they were in the sky. That, like you're saying, it could be now the F-16s, 15s, whatever they got the combinate mix over there is already doing a little bit of its work. But I don't know. I'm not an expert on that area. We'll need the F-16 guy.
Yeah.
F-16. He can correct my ignorance. So.
I mean, with those longer, if they do give them those longer range anti-air missiles, it would also make a difference from them flying their own, equivalent of like an AWACS and other intel, because they only have a couple of their really good ones. And if you can reach out a few hundred miles, like it's going to push them back. They'll have to be aware that that's a threat. And those are very expensive platforms. It'll be great to even shoot a couple more down.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, I don't want to go too long. So we did a half hour. We try to keep these to a half hour, everybody. That way we're not dragging it out. But we do appreciate everybody come. Oh, we did get one other question. This will be the last one then. Everyone saw the video where Russia presented the dissection of an ATACMS guidance package. Do you think this is a significant impact on Western capabilities, or is it just public opinion thing?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not that significant. They've already been degrading. Like the small diameter glide bomb guidance system has been horrible. The ATACMS has gotten. I don't know if it's because of that particular capture of that equipment, but the Russians have gotten a much better understanding of how to spoof that system. And people probably get mad, so I won't say, but it's not actually that hard to spoof things. Like they'll pretend it's all this dark art stuff. It's not. Let's just put it this way: it's really not. Once you understand how to do it, it's not hard to spoof these systems. And these are all older systems that they've been putting out there, as far as I know. I don't think they've given them their latest, newest stuff. But let's put it this way: like the military-industrial complex has to change, especially in America, because they build a system, they certify it. It takes 5 years, or it takes however long. They put a bunch of impediments in the way called regulatory capture. We can talk about that later, but there's a lot of ways that it just makes it hard to innovate and build new systems and to make them programs of record. So what you have is this very slow turnover. So in any kind of real conflict, once the enemy figures your system out, it's unlikely right now with the way the U.S. military industrial complex is structured that it would be able to quickly innovate new things. Now, there are newer systems, and I think a lot of this stuff will go, like there's a whole GPS mafia within the military industrial complex. GPS, as we know, is quite vulnerable to spoofing, jamming, and why they continue to want to do that is really doesn't make any sense when you have much more capable visual nav, magnetic systems, better AI for doing more exquisite inertial nav systems and prediction of flight paths and all this stuff like that. When I see garage door companies starting to make these effective systems, you would hope the U.S. military has that stuff as well. And why they keep relying on basically GPS guidance systems is kind of ridiculous. So ultimately, no, I don't think it's a huge deal. That may have made a deal right now for the Ukrainians. I think what it signals is that you can't rely on GPS. It's kind of a fool's errand to do that. You want to have multiple systems. I'm not saying not to put GPS in, because the more sensors, the better, and everything's getting cheaper and easier to build. So you might as well have it as an additional sensor. But we shouldn't build any more weapons that rely on those exclusively.
All right. Excellent. Everybody, appreciate you coming. Again, if you're interested in joining Technology United for Ukraine, engineers, scientists, or anybody just wants to help out technical people, or just people who just want to help Ukraine, link will be in the description. And thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, guys. Appreciate it. So we'll do it again, have more, and happy to answer them.
Yeah, we'll need Michael and Ivan to come back, and Terry. They can keep the show going with their questions. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys coming.